Tower of Sirth, Ungol, and Shelob's Lair is an adventure module for the Middle-earth role-playing game system. Like all of I.C.E. Middle-earth products, it is adaptable to most role-playing games. And that's the truth. Welcome, my friends, fellow brigaders, fellow interest MERP enthusiasts, the random Yahoo who pushed the button and said, "What the hell is this?" This is the Fat Man's revisitation of Iron Crown Enterprises' Middle-earth role-playing game system. This particular installment is called the Tower of Sirth Ungol and Shelob's Lair. Basically an adventure module, right? Nice little picture. Actually, fairly close to the one that the CGI version that they used in the movie. Go figure. Theory on all that, but we'll get into that here. This particular one was actually used when I got it. The reason I can tell you that without a doubt is because somebody else had written on it before I got it. And at this point, I'm going to have to say that it had probably already been produced and sold, and then they moved on to other things, and this was no longer available, easily obtainable. And keep in mind that when I was buying these things in the early 80s, mid 80s, that was before the internet, and it was much more difficult to just acquire things. So if you wanted a used copy of something, you couldn't go Google it, you couldn't go look to eBay or Amazon or something like that. You had to, go through a lot of extra hassle. You needed to know somebody who was in the industry who, or in the retailing side of things, who had access to other sources of supplies. Ivor was really good at that. He went to a lot of conventions and had set up a merchant's table. So he always had a little notebook of a list of people who had I'm looking for this kind of thing. So he knew if he could get it from some other vendor, he could acquire it and then bring it and resell it to us for a small profit. The other way, of course, was to write directly to the company, get their catalog, and ask for a list of what's available. Unfortunately, a lot of times that played out, especially these smaller companies at the time, is that they had a limited run on these things. They don't produce 50,000 copies of something so that they can sit up on a warehouse for the next 50 years and getting rid of them. Which they do a little bit more of that today, especially when you're dealing with things like Amazon, because my understanding is that the Amazon will buy entire pallets of stuff and then they'll warehouse it, knowing that giving time they'll sell every last one of them. It's just a matter of a waiting game, right? And having reasonable inventory on something. Still, this was used when I got it and it's in fairly good shape, although it's seen some wear and tear. It lists levels 1 through 7 as for player characters, and at least one encounter is 8th level. So I can't honestly say one way or another because I've never got a chance to use this one that I can recall for any of my burp games. Anyway, we're all familiar with the novels and the movies, especially the scene where Frodo and Samwise are trying to that are tricked by Gollum, who leads them to the Spider's Pass above Minas Ithil, and where Frodo's briefly captured. Samwise stands up and is recognized as a bit more tougher than what people was giving him credit for, and they were able to slip their way into Mordor through the back door, so to speak. So we got a nice colorful map of the region. We're talking an area down here because the front gate's up here, right? I don't need to tell you that. You probably already all know that stuff. The book itself, typical of all ICE products from MERP, has your basic guidelines and stuff like this, all nicely printed and labeled out to give you an ease of instruction. So just about anyone can pick this thing up and go, what is this? Here's that. Here's a little blurb for Mr. Bach and a few others where we were having a discussion here a while back about the orcs and the origin of the orcs as far as the Lord of the Rings Tolkien canon. It says here, under the entry, originally bred by Morgoth in the First Age, these creatures quickly became servants of darkness. It is likely that they were not inherently evil, but were culturally and mentally predisposed towards the foul life. Legend has it that their ancestors were elves who were twisted in mind or body by the Black Enemy. Because man hadn't arrived on the scene at that point. So unless there was another intelligent race that Morgoth got his hands on and was utterly able to corrupt, then it is what it is. They also go to great length that none of the Ainur, or however it's pronounced, Ainur, God's servants, could produce life from nothing. Only however it's pronounced, had that right. The rest of them basically had to manipulate the existing material, and this is where we end up with these variants and things like the orcs and Ents. The dwarves are a special case because they were created by an Aer, but when the one found out about it, they took pity on them and said, okay, after I introduce the elves, I'll introduce the dwarves, and he's the one that put the spark of life in the dwarves, not the creator. So forth. Introduction to the background talks about Minas Ithil, the physical geography, the climate, the roads and passes, plants and animals, vegetation, animal life, so on and so forth. The giant spiders. They actually make a point that the giant spiders are not. They are evil, but they're not evil. They are of another type of evil. They have nothing to do with Sauron or Morgoth, but they're descended from Ungoliant, the devourer of light, who was the original monstrosity in the shape of a spider. Shelob is her great-granddaughter or something to that effect, and also are the giant spiders, the Mirkwood. They're all interrelated to some degree or another. Shelob just happens to be the grandmother of all spiders at the time. And it goes, the monstrous predator of this region remains unconsidered to be considered. Giant spiders afflict many lands in Middle Earth, but their original breeding ground lies here. From Torque Ungol, the lair of the mother of the evil spider kind, Shelob, spiderlings have been spread throughout the Efeldoth, the Morgai, and beyond Mordor to the dark fortress of Dol Guldur and the shadowy Mirkwood. Giant spiders combine characteristics of the common web spinning and hunting varieties of arachnoids. They congregate in shadowy colonies as many as 20, demarcating their gloomy lairs with enormous webs of highly valued spider silk sprung between rocks and trees. Giant spiders possess deadly and paralyzing venoms, paralyzing a victim, blah, blah, blah. Giant spiders which grow to be 4 to 8 feet wide, communicate by means of ominous clicking and hissing sounds and by a limited telepathic capability within a range of about 100 feet. Other minds with either natural or magically given telepathic capability can tap into the spider's thoughts and may well believe the spiders are actually speaking. There is, of course, little attraction in reading a spider's minds. They've only learned what it will do next. Giant spiders are uniformly evil and of low intelligence, and their thoughts are mainly concerned how to sate their appetites. However, they are not servants of the Dark Lord, but products of an independent evil no less ancient and cruel than he. So, they make convenient watchdogs and patrol animals for Sauron on occasion in various locations, but he has no control over them whatsoever. Even his minions, as witnessed in the movie, and in the book, are subject to the spider's whim. Spiders will hunt and eat anything, and they're not going to be manipulated and controlled as like pets or trained animals or something. They're a little bit too intelligent for that. Then we got politics and power of the region, the history, the people of Gondor, the free peoples, the military forces in the region, Shelob the Horus. See, now this particular book, most of the adventures are set at a point when Minas Ithil is still Minas Ithil and it hasn't become Minas Morgul. So you have Gondorian forces in Ithian, or Tethian, or however they pronounce it. Ithian's how I've always pronounced the western bank of the Unadin across from Minas Tirith. the city of the moon, or the fortress of the moon, however you want to look at it, sits in the shadow of the spider's lair. The spider lairs at the top of the endless stairs, and has never been successfully. At no point did the Gondorian forces ever successfully get rid of her. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been such a piece in the story, right? It goes on here, gives you the actual stats. Shelob the horror, the description, some 20 feet long. Each of her legs extends to almost full length, about 18 feet. Entire body is about many layer hide, folds of which compress a lot, splendor, blah, blah, blah. Shelob's spell lists: open channeling, animus list, ranger list, open essence bard list, open, close, and based evil mentalist. Yeah. This is a good example of magic use in Middle Earth, in MERP, based on the ICE's take on this. And as I've said repeatedly, and if you're an enthusiast of Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, you'll understand that you've got a handful of wizards who are actually, you know, minor deity demigod flunkies from the Undying Land sent here to thwart the Sauron, who is another, a non-standard whatever, and you don't see human or elven magic users running around. Now, in the Hobbits, in the movie, Peter Jackson took some liberty, but I think he built it on a foundation that was established. Showed Galadriel, he actually showed a magical battle. It started out with Gandalf against Sauron, and then when he fails and is captured, the rest of the White Council shows up, and we see Galadriel in her full form. Now, how is it that Gandalf and Saruman are Mayor, and they are part of the god pantheon mythos. They're basically servants or angels or what have you of the gods. And here, this high Noldar lady, this high level, powerful, elvish yet still mortal, technically mortal, because elves are arguably immortal in MERP. This is where we get that mindset. Forgotten Realms tried to alter that, or D&D tried to alter that by actually giving them a estimated lifespan of upwards of 1,000 years, right? But anyway, in Middle Earth, the body dies, they go to the Undying Lands, and they're basically returned to their body, blah, blah, blah. How is it that Galadriel had a heck of a lot more power against Sauron than Gandalf did, or Saruman? Wouldn't he, as the head of the White Council and the head of the Istari, the five wizards, been able to dominate Sauron and at least dispatch him, banish him, drive him off? Apparently not, right? But what did we see? We've seen power, we've seen magic, but we didn't see the atypical sorcery and sword and sorcery type, where you see a lot of flashy fireworks and overt incantations and things that are of a, I call the flashbang effect. A lot of her stuff was more, sublime in the magic department, as was Gandalf's. He did not go around flinging it around. There's one brief mention in the books. I don't think it came up in the movies, but there was a point when they were up on the Redhorn Pass in the middle of a blizzard that Sauron had summoned, and to prevent them from crossing over the mountains. And Gandalf was forced to light a fire so they didn't freeze to death, or the hobbits didn't freeze to death. And he said, "Now I've basically told every so and so from here to such and such that Gandalf the Grey is here." So there's this kind of neo-force mindset in that aspect, that if one user uses it, the others can then can notice that there was a burst of mana or power points or what have you in that vicinity and help pinpoint in on it. So in this case, when I look at her spell list, lion's share of these things are self-defense and mental stuff. So you talk about detection, mastery, calm spirits, spell defense, protections, all healing lists, save self only. Why would a spider need to heal anything but itself? Ranger's list, nature's geas, mastery, spell away, spirit mastery, essence ways. The bard list, controlling song, sound control. And it quotes, if using roll master, she is a master of mentalism and may cast the following list at 2/30th level. Cloaking, damage resistance, attack avoidance, self-healing, detection, spell resistance, sense mastery, speed, mind erosion, mind death, mind domination. See, there's nothing out there that she can't cast magic missiles, can't fling a fireball or a lightning bolt. Most of this stuff is sublime. It either protects or defends herself, enhances her ability to get around or to avoid detection, or to detect other beings that are trying to cloak themselves, and or to influence them mentally. Right now, as a GM, I've had a lot of players over the years who are attracted to the flash and bang, and they look at those other things with a lot of disdain, and because how does this stuff work? It's just like as a GM, and I'm guilty of that too on occasion. You know, there is a wide range of magic abilities that we tend to either poo-poo or push off to the side and deal with as little as possible, because it doesn't avoid basically an overt classical assault on something else, right? Go figure. Anyway. Says, unlike ordinary spellcasters, she will cast spells affecting several beings simultaneously, simply multiplying the power point expenditure for each individual affected. They list her stats at level 50, a demon or great spider, size and speed huge and fast, 500 hit points, including 20 to each leg, 30 to each of the great clusters of eyes. Armor, defense, attack, secondary to territory, optional critical hit, spell bonuses, power points, she has 200, and overwhelming presence. 200 power points. See, that's now in that aspect, up against one individual, 200 power points. That's a lot of power, right? I'm not sure how to translate that into Dungeons and Dragons per se, because their system doesn't use mana or power points or some sort of expenditure that you have to regain. In their case, you're limited to the number of spells you can have at a given level. So you fire off this, that, and the other thing, and then you're done until you have a chance to rest and recuperate, or in this case, study your spell books if you're a wizard, which happens 24 hours later based on the general premise. We stop for the night in camp, and while everybody's sleeping, I'll spend all night whatever, or in the case of the cleric, spends all night or spends an hour, praying to his or her god, so on and so forth. And in this case, it's like bullets in a gun. You got X amount of points to use, and this spell takes 20 points to fire off. Well, in her case, she could fire that with single spell 20 different times before she's depleted for that particular period of time. And then her power points regenerate. Now, there's various arguments and mechanics that say, does that happen at one time, or is that a gradual thing? I was always of the belief that it was a gradual thing. Thus, if I had, as an example, 24 power points, I would regain 1 power point for every hour of non-use. So if I went and I had to expend all 24 of these things in a battle, then every hour after the battle was over, 1 point would regenerate. And so it was plausible for some very low-level spells to continuously use them over and over again if necessary, acknowledging the fact that you weren't going to regain your points at a faster rate. Now, if you had 240, that would be 24 points an hour. So, it's a matter of perspective, I guess, and how you want to interpret the mechanics, right? Then they make a note here As the GM, you should be especially careful when dealing with Shelob, for her fate has marked her with a special purpose, and her death at this time would be extremely inappropriate. Keep in mind that she is a coward and will flee without hesitation if she thinks she might be in real danger. Her spells and other skills are used with skill and care, however, she should be almost invincible, paralyzing her foes with fear and then having her cruel way with their helpless bodies. See, here is an actual written blurb, while it's focused specifically on Shelob, that I've been saying for a long, long time, and I've said it in a number of vlogs over the past year, that this all or nothing mindset that so many GMs apply to their creatures, their Lord, this thing's running along. I might have to do part two. Yeah, we're gonna have to do that. Want to hear more? Come back. See section 2. Right?